Hello, everyone. I'm going to make sure that you guys can hear me. Okay. Okay. Just making sure. If you are watching and you can help me out, I'd appreciate knowing whether you can hear me or not because I have a different kind of setup because I was trying to use my green screen today. And I've had all sorts of issues with lighting because I have a special light, but it still doesn't want to work with the green screen for some reason, and it's really bright. So I'm not really sure what I'm doing wrong, but I'll figure it out eventually. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about me, and when I do things without a script, I'm not as good with it unless I'm in like a real life situation where I'm out interacting with my kids and cooking and normal stuff like that. But when it's just me talking about me, not so much. But I normally do a show on Friday, so I wanted to come on and talk to you guys a little bit about me because I spend so much time talking about my kids and their disabilities, and I mention mine sometimes, like that I'm on the spectrum, but I don't really tell you a lot more than that. Oh hey Chris. So, basically about me, I was born in August. I do feel a lot better on steroids and antibiotics, and I'm 100% better. So, appreciate you. Thank you for asking. So you're gonna know this stuff already, Crystal, but basically, I was born in Danville, Virginia, and uh, was raised in Climax, Virginia. Yes, you heard that right. That's the name of the town. I get picked on about that a lot from my husband, but that was where I was. My dad was a volunteer firefighter, and so was my mom, and EMS in Climax, Virginia. I still have a lot of family there. The area around there is like Chatham and Gretna and Lynchburg, Alta Vista, and of course, Danville. Uh, Climax was really small. It had a very small school, had a very, volunteer fire department there. And there's not a whole lot I remember because I was super young. Crystal, you probably remember a lot more. Yes. But basically, there was, um, I lived there until about 9 years old. So I was in third grade when we moved for the first time. I don't, like I said, I don't remember a whole lot. I lived in a trailer. I stayed with my granny a lot. Had a lot of family around us. We went to my grandma's for Christmas and a lot of things like that. I remember mom worked at, she was like a CPA and did some stuff like that. But I mainly remember dad being a firefighter because we were always at the fire department and doing stuff there. There was this little corner store that we went to all the time that was close to a lake of some kind. And I just remember going there all the time and getting candy for a cent, like Crystal said. I also got piano lessons from someone there. So if you know me from when I was a kid, you probably know more than I do because I'm just going off my memory. But I know that I was a rambunctious kid. I did some pretty crazy stuff, and I remember walking into a shed one time and finding a snake and running back home and screaming about it. Um, we had our own little garden behind our trailer. We lived close to some wooded areas, but yeah, I don't remember a whole lot from back then. My dad became a minister about the time I was in third grade, which is when we moved to North Carolina where he was going to school. And we moved a couple of times. So we lived in Hendersonville or Edneyville, North Carolina, moved to Rowan County, then like the Salisbury, North Carolina, Rowan County area, and then to Kannapolis. And so there's a lot of changes going on at that point. If you watch any of my older videos on my other channel, just my regular April Muller channel, I have my testimony on there, how I became a Christian, that I got saved. in my 20s, but I had my first initial encounter with God when I was about 9. So, went to, I had some rough times in North Carolina, and a lot of the moving, it was really rough, especially in Kannapolis, North Carolina. I was pretty bullied pretty badly in the school system there. That was my 6th grade year. But at that point, my dad finished his schooling and took a church in South Dakota. So we moved all the way across the country, halfway across the country, to South Dakota. Total culture shock. A lot of differences between Virginia and South Dakota. That's for sure. But I was always interested in playing the piano. So even I started piano lessons when I was 5, and I was in Virginia, and I was able to continue on with that all the way up through in South Dakota. But there was a really big difference in the school systems between Virginia and South Dakota. And it was hard to adjust to the way things were in the school systems there. It took me a while to get caught up because I was a straight A student. Struggled a little bit the first couple of years, went back to being a straight A student. But they also had things that I didn't have in Virginia. So like I had the ability to take swimming lessons, which I never got in Virginia. I had the ability to join a band and do some chorus and other things like that that I didn't have the opportunity to do in North Carolina and Virginia. So I'm very musically minded. I love music. I not just play the piano, I have now learned to play the flute, the trombone, the trumpet, and the organ, a little bit of guitar, and I think that's about it. I sing alto. I enjoy being in praise bands. I used to play the keyboard in a praise band. For my dad's church, I used to play the piano. For church, played a lot of hymns and praise music for that. I attempted to write my own music, didn't do very good with it, so I kind of gave up on that. But I do enjoy music. I did get to do some sports, softball, basketball, track. That's mainly what I did for sports. Sports was not my thing. Being competitive was not my thing. It still is not my thing. I didn't even like to play Monopoly or board games. I hated it. It was just like, no, I don't want to do those things. I hated like Red Rover and Simon Says and all of those crazy games as a kid. Like I absolutely hated it. I didn't want anything to do with those things. But I was always very good at academically, and I enjoyed math, and I wasn't a big reader. Reading was hard for me, but I got along with it. Like I did fine in English. I had good English scores, and my grammar was fine, and writing was really good. But I struggle with reading. It's a lot harder for me to read. And so I never got into like reading fiction things. I kind of just like nonfiction and learning things about anything and everything that I can get my hands on, which is kind of what makes me a little bit of a different person because I think differently, I think. And that's kind of where like some of the autism stuff comes in because I was very obsessive compulsive. Things had to be a certain way. I had a schedule I had to follow. I couldn't have like the little sewed part on the toes of your socks could not be on the bottom of my foot. It would drive me crazy. I would take my socks off. I wouldn't wear them. I had to have none of my food could be touching. I wouldn't eat after anybody, drink after anybody, use anybody else's fork or plate or anything else. It had to be clean. Like I was very germ focused on everything. And I had to have a shower every morning. Like I had this routine I had to follow every day. And then I was a perfectionist. So I was not happy if I didn't get an A or if I got in trouble. I mean, I could be looked at if I did something wrong, and it would upset me that I would get in trouble. Thought about just thinking constantly nonstop about everything. And then of course the deep thinking about the world and life and the meaning of everything. So I was very spiritual. I spent a lot of time reading the Bible and spending time with God. And if you watched any of my other videos, you know that I've had supernatural experiences since I was about 5 years old, which I'm not going to cover that in this video. But I do have other videos that I have made on it. I am open to talking about it. I still continue to have supernatural experiences to this day, but I've just kind of always been open to those kinds of things. And I've seen and heard a lot. Let's see, what else can I tell you guys about myself? So, as an adult, you tend to think more about who you are now instead of who you were back then. Because we grow and we change, and life changes us and experience changes us into who we are. And but your childhood does play a huge part in how you think and what you do and those kinds of things. And then I reflect in my own youth and what I went through as a kid to what my kids are going through and seeing some of the same behaviors about that. I have tons of alarms on my phone that keep me updated for all the stuff that I need to do. Uh, Gosh, and if you've watched my video about my schedule, I have another video about my schedule. You'll see why I have so many reminders and alarms and stuff. But I try to turn them off when I'm on my stream. Anyway, so some of my kids have similar issues, and one of the biggest things that my kids struggle with that I recognized from when I was a kid was the perfectionistic tendencies, especially Elijah. And some of Jeremiah has a little bit of that tendency, and just being down, like negative. Elijah likes to get really upset if he does something wrong. Even if I tell him, like, hey, did you do this? And I'm just asking him if he did it, he'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot. And he just has this huge meltdown. Like, I don't know if I had meltdowns like that. I'd have to ask my mom, but I know that I would get really upset if I forgot something or I didn't get an A or things weren't the way that they were supposed to be. I'd be curious to know if I was really emotional or not. I kind of remember, especially my teenage years, being more bland, like more like a even keel. Didn't really get angry, didn't really get fry all the time, but didn't really, like, I wasn't really happy either. Like, I was just kind of blah, you know. But a lot of stuff happened. So we moved to South Dakota. We weren't there very long, and that was a hard change, being new and small town. Everybody knows everybody. You're not from here. You don't belong. Yes, I blame my sister for stuff all the time. I was not a good kid. I did some bad stuff, but until I got to be older. But I was like, I don't want to ever get in trouble for anything. I was the kid who never was home late for curfew. I hardly ever got in trouble. Like, if I did anything that was bad, I was terrified of whatever the consequences would be. Not that the consequences were ever bad. It was just, I was scared of police officers, even though I never did anything wrong. Principals and everything else. I was just, I don't know. I was just scared of everything. But I get so lost in my mind. I'm sorry. But so we went. I first went to public school, and that was kind of rough. And so our family put us into a Christian school there in Mitchell, South Dakota, which is where we were living. And that's also where I met my husband. I met him, I think I met him the first time when I was in 8th grade. That's when we started going to Christian school for me. It was a lot different. There was only like 8 or 9 people total in my class. So my graduating high school class of 9. Very small school, but a lot more attention from the teachers, and that was okay. And things like that. but I was also picked on still. I was still, made fun of a lot because I was different. And I didn't really know. And now I know that you knew we would get married. Yeah. Now I know that I have autism tendencies, so social situations were awkward for me. I would say stuff that was inappropriate, or I wouldn't dress my clothes would be kind of unkempt, or my hair wouldn't be done right, or there was just different things that I didn't really pay attention to, and now I know that that's autism related. Like, I didn't know back then, so I was made fun of a lot, and then autism wasn't really a thing, so there was really no understanding. I was just a weird kid, I just was not like everybody else, and it didn't help that I wasn't from the area and didn't grow up with the kids either. So, and being a pastor's daughter, so being a preacher's kid, you have other expectations on your behavior from other people. They expect you to act and be a certain way because you're a preacher's kid, and that added more. Um, that added more to my fear, but it also added more to the being picked on and made fun of. But I got through it, and I tell my kids all the time, like, high school, middle school, it doesn't last. It's over. You move on. You have an adult life. You can make your own choices, and you don't have to be around those people anymore. And most of them aren't in my life anymore, except for the ones that, when we become adults, we learn to get along with each other. We learn to not care. We're like, wow, that was really stupid that I did that back then. And so I have a lot of people from high school that are my friends today. Well, there's only 9 of them, so too many choices and friends. But the hardest thing was when my dad got cancer, and I don't want to be like a downer or anything like that, but that was a huge life changer when my dad got diagnosed with cancer. And I think he was 35 when he was diagnosed, and he had cancer for about 18 months. I might be wrong. It might be 15 months. It was 15 to 18 months. It wasn't very long before he passed away from colon cancer. And for the whole year that he was sick, I kind of responded differently than other people, even Crystal. I spent a heck of a lot of time with Dad, and as much time as I could. I don't know if that made it easier or harder when he passed away, but that kind of set the tone for one. It caused me to be, and then Dad found out he was adopted, which that has been a huge thing that I'm working on right now. So I have done DNA research, and I'm doing genealogy research because I'm trying to locate my dad's biological father. We found out who his biological mother was, and then I've been able to connect with some of that family, which is awesome because I'm getting to meet new family. And I have not figured out who the father is of my dad, but I'm still working on it, and eventually I'll have more family to get to know. Obadiah, close the door. So, but yeah, I did get to spend a lot of time with Dad, and he wrote a journal, and that's awesome. I've read it multiple times. There's some really good stuff in there, and eventually I would like to share some of the things that he wrote, because he wrote some sermons and he had some life lessons in there aside from just personal stuff. And I do have copies of them and stuff, but Dad was a great guy, and we were really close, and I was a daddy's girl, so it was hard when he passed. And it caused me to have more fear. So I already had a lot of anxiety and fear, but then losing a parent that young, I was 15 when he passed, just caused a lot more fear and anxiety. So I ended up meeting Richie again in 8th grade. We started dating when I was my sophomore year, which was after my dad passed away. Although we had been friends for several years prior to then, and he helped me with my paper out. And like Crystal said, she knew we'd get married. And I think my dad knew too before he passed away. We were just good friends prior to his passing. So, we eventually started dating. And obviously we got married. And we got married right after I graduated high school. I wanted to be a flight medic. That was my dream job. and sort of kind of what my dad did because he used to be a firefighter EMT, but I really enjoyed the medical field and helping other people, and I kind of wanted to do missionary work. So I really enjoyed going after that goal, even though I never got there because God had other plans. And that's one of the things that I've learned a lot about life is that God knows better than we do. He knows the past, the present, and the future, and we can't see the whole picture. And not just us, but everybody that he loves and cares about. And he works in ways that he reaches all those people that he loves, including us. And so the plans that I had were not the plans that God had. So initially, I tried to become an EMT, and I did get my certification. I volunteered for about a year. I absolutely loved it. I wish I could have kept up with it, but what ended up ending that career was having my first son. And that was Elijah. And he was born. So Richie and I were together the first 3 years of our marriage. We were together 1 year non-consecutively of that year because of the Navy. And we had attempted to have a child, but I was told I couldn't even have children. So I literally went 2 years being told that I couldn't have children at all. And I was even, seeing specialists and doctors, and they were trying to give me medication. And eventually I was like, you know what? If God wants me to have a kid, I'll have a kid. I'm not taking these meds. I'm not doing these things anymore. I'm just going to live my life. And not more than 6 months after I stopped taking medication and trying to have a child, I got pregnant with Elijah. Unfortunately, we had moved cross country at this point. Richie's career had moved him from Washington State, where we lived in Bremerton, all the way across the country to Virginia Beach. And then I ended up getting pregnant with Elijah. And Elijah, if you've watched any of my other videos about him, he ended up having a serious heart defect, aspirated meconium, was in the hospital. He was a very sick little dude. And that took all of my time. There was no time to get a job. There was no time to pursue a career. There was no time to go to college. Like, Elijah became my everyday responsibility to take care of. And that was hard on me and Richie. And we went through some rough times because it was a huge adjustment. And having a child with special needs, and then it being your first child, especially when you've tried for years to have a child and then you're told you can't have kids, and then you finally do have one, and then one you have has all these medical issues, it was just a whole lot to take in. And I won't go into all of that because that's also in some of my testimony videos on my April Muller YouTube channel. But we eventually worked through that, and I ended up having a bunch more kids. So now I have 7. Life has not been easy, that's for sure. The thing with Crystal said Dad knew. I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but I think Dad knew I was going to have kids. He knew I was going to marry Richie too, but he blessed me before he passed away with having lots of kids, and I blame him for it every time. Like, Dad, it's your fault. I have 7 boys. And I just can see him laughing, just laughing, watching me take care of 7 boys. Just know, like, he always wanted a big family, and I ended up having 2 siblings that were really split. So I was 15 when Dad died. Crystal, you were 13, I think. And then Josh, my brother, was only 2 years old, and then my sister was 6 months old. So there's a huge gap, but God did give my dad 2 more children before he passed. But I know that they were super young when he died, and so they never really got to know them. And I hope that my younger siblings will eventually want to know who my dad was, and that they'll talk to me about that. They haven't at this point. They're both adults now, but maybe one day they'll talk to me about it. And their dad wrote to them in their journal and stuff too. But so he always wanted a big family. So at that point, he kind of put it off on me. You're going to have the big family. So I'm the one that ended up with all the kids. And they say that the prayer of a righteous man availeth much. And honestly, my dad was a righteous man and his prayer availed. I had 7 boys. So I just have to laugh at it. And one day he'll get to meet all of them. I have had a couple of miscarriages, so I do have, dad has some of my kids with them already. So I haven't talked about the miscarriages on here, but I have had 3 miscarriages. Aside from the 7 living that I have now. So I have talked a good 25 minutes. That's a good introduction to me. I did not get a whole lot into the medical stuff, but I have had a lot of medical problems throughout my life. When I was a teenager, I kind of got called a hypochondriac. People thought I was making it up, that I was sick all the time, and a lot of times doctors would blow me off, or you just want attention. It wasn't until I became an adult and got into my own medical health care that they started finding things that were not right. So, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is one, which is a connective tissue disorder, which is what made it easier for me to get hurt. I literally broke my wrist in 5th grade and I fell from a standing position. And nobody thought there was any way my wrist was broken. And in fact, when I went to the ER, they put it in a brace and they couldn't see whether it was broken because it was swollen. But like, they're like, no way you broke your wrist from falling from a standing position. Like, I wasn't running or anything. I was just standing and fell down. Turns out it was broken. That explains some of those things. I've had a lot of immune issues, which is why me and Crystal asked me if I gotten better, because I don't get over sicknesses and I don't get fevers when I get sick too, which is another thing that's kind of associated with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is autonomic dysfunction, which Elijah has, where you don't regulate your body temperature. So a lot of times I will get infections and I have no fever. So some of those times when I was sick as a kid, I really was sick. I just didn't have a fever. So like a lot of times they would say, yeah, I never drank milk. I hated milk. But they would say, there's nothing wrong with you. And I think some of those times I really was sick. I just didn't present typical. And I have that same issue with Elijah. One time Elijah got pneumonia. And the only way we found out he had pneumonia is he was sleeping all the time. He never had a fever. He didn't have a cough. He wasn't having a really hard time breathing. And I went to the doctor to say, look, he's sleeping a lot. I don't know what's wrong. And sure enough, he had pneumonia. So I kind of have some of those same issues. I have to be proactive about how I feel and when I speak to the doctor, because I don't have typical symptoms when I'm sick. But so I also found out I had some genetic mutations, sponge kidney, ended up getting kidney stone. I have some female issues, which is why, I was initially told I couldn't have children. Obadiah, stop! Then I have like 14 diagnoses. So I've also had some issues absorbing minerals and vitamins. And I have a hard time with medications. So some medications my body doesn't process, so they don't work. I've had some genetic testing done to help me figure out some of those things. One of the things that they use to treat a lot of times for depression is a SSRI or a serotonin, and my body does not absorb that. So there are specific, I have to use like an SNRI because my body does not respond to SSRIs. And I didn't learn that until maybe 2 years ago. So that's an interesting thing. And if you have mental health, I highly suggest you get the genetic testing for absorption of meds, because I was treated for over 10 years on a medication that my body wasn't absorbing. So, yeah. No! All right. And I've had a lot of acute issues, which has led me to be in the hospital a lot with the kidney stone, and then I had appendicitis this past year, and then I've been hospitalized for pneumonia, and I've had some issues with my lungs that have never been figured out. I have a nodule on my lung, and no idea where it came from, and it hasn't grown, thankfully. Obadiah, enough. that hasn't been figured out why I have that on my lungs. So a lot more stuff, and I'm still working through my medical stuff. It's one of those things where if you have one really weird genetic thing, you're likely to have another weird genetic thing or multiple weird genetic things. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing some of the genealogy research too, is because I'm trying to learn the medical history of the family that I didn't know, and I don't know about. And maybe I can get some answers as to why we have some of these things going on and why the kids have some of the mental health issues that they have and the autism and things like that. And maybe getting the understanding of why I'm struggling so much with some of the medical things that I'm dealing with. Medical can be an invisible disability. I look healthy, I look fine. You wouldn't know that there was anything wrong with me. I just saw the nutritionist yesterday, and I told her that I wasn't a candidate for gastric bypass surgery, and she looked at me and said, why? She's like, you're young, you look healthy to me. I'm like, I look healthy, but I'm not healthy. You have no idea. Like, I'm at 14 medical diagnoses and all this other stuff going on. And the doctor like took one look at my record and was like, nope, you're not getting surgery ever. I don't handle surgery well either. Even my appendicitis, I think having the appendix taken out, I think the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is kind of playing into some of the issues that I'm having now with my weight. My body just doesn't recover from soft tissue injury and being any type of surgery. It took me a year to get over the first C-section I had. So I could go on and on and on and on about me. If you can see behind me, I have this new thing. I don't know. I stand for biblical truth in all situations, is what it says. And that's definitely who I am. I'm all about Bible and standing for truth and seeking the truth, even though I don't spend a whole lot of time talking about it on these shows. Yeah, they wouldn't do gastric bypass anyway. There's a whole bunch of different surgeries they do nowadays to help with weight loss that are not full gastric bypass. They have like sleeves and all sorts of other stuff. But no, I don't want it anyway. I didn't go for surgery. I went for medical directed weight loss is why I went. But it's the same clinic that does surgery. So they always talk about it, but I don't want it. And I never want it. I'm going to work hard and get the weight off myself. And it's going to be hard, but I'm going to do the best that I can. And Pampered Chef is going to help me because their stuff makes things easier for me to cook healthy meals and prepare healthy meals so that when I don't have a lot of time, I can still cook a good healthy luncheon. Yeah. But I don't normally keep my videos this long, and the boys and Obadiah will not leave me alone. He's like yelling at me under the door, and I told him, I was like, look, boys, I'm gonna be this long. You guys can play your games. Just let me be for a minute. I don't know what he wants. And I have a gate on my door, but not to keep the kids out. I have a gate on my door to keep the dog out. Because I have my kitty in my room. And doggy and kitty are still trying to get along. So next week I might come back and talk some more just to give you guys some more information, and I will have a PowerPoint presentation that I can get together and go over some more of the medical stuff. I tend to get more interaction and views on things when I'm just chatting and talking about real life stuff. So I'm going to try to do some more of that too. And Mondays I will still do cooking, and Fridays at some point during Friday I will do another show like this. So I hope you guys have a good weekend. You're enjoying your summer, that you're enjoying learning more about my family, and that you will like, share, and subscribe. Get me some more subscribers to my channel, and hopefully I can get some more people from here as well to know what's going on and get to know me and my family and learn more about the disabilities and bring awareness to those things and understanding. One of the things for me is that I want to get to know people. I don't want to jump to conclusions about anybody because we all have a story. We all have things that we've gone through in our past, and I just like making friends and getting to know more about people, and I'll help any way that I can for those that I do get to know. So, but I am a mama bear, so I protect my kids. So I love you too, Chris, and I hope you guys have a good weekend. If you're interested in any of the Pampered Chef stuff that I'm now doing, let me know. I'll send you a link to the parties and stuff that I'm doing. So I will see you guys all next on Monday. Bye.